just want to be clear that I'm not going to support the plan, and I want to just take a minute and say why. Primarily, it comes down to staging. And I feel the council's, again, missed an opportunity to link the approval of the plan to making sure that the infrastructure is in place to handle the plan. And I think it's a serious mistake. I mean, nobody's arguing about the density. Even the residents aren't arguing about the cumulative number of square feet. So that's not the issue here. And the council did some work to remove the density off the edges, which I thought was a really important thing to do. But the ability to make this plan work lies on the ability to achieve, two things. One is, the park stuff, which is a dollar issue, and the other is how we manage the traffic and the congestion there. And that's not a dollar issue, that's a political will issue. And our staff told us that we could get this plan in balance and reminded us that other areas have mode shares that are comparable to what is aspirational in Bethesda. And instead we were confronted with statements from staff that you couldn't do staging because they didn't believe we could achieve the mode share goals in a reasonable amount of time. And I just frankly don't believe that's true. I believe we have the ability to achieve the mode shares in a reasonable amount of time, and we should have done so. The yellow flashing light, or the warning signal that is alluded to in here as a substitute, really isn't going to do anything, because you are likely to see the additional density applied for rather quickly, because this is a grab bag. I mean, there are more people who want density than there is density in this plan. I think everybody's acknowledged that there is a greater demand for density on properties than what we've allowed in this plan. And so it's very likely that since the density will go away, and it's not a whole lot of density, and I'll also acknowledge that it's not a whole lot of density in the grand scheme of things, it could go very quickly. And if it goes quickly, you really have nothing to monitor at the 30.4 stage, which I'll also add is beyond the traffic level that was even tested for this plan. So we're setting your monitoring point beyond what was tested. We already know that at what was tested, the plan traffic results aren't good. So you can only conclude that the results of 30.4 are bad, but you actually have nothing concretely to monitor. It is absolutely unlikely that enough projects will get built by the time people have applied for the amount of density that you would see any major change on the ground. I mean, Marriott projects, it was not going to come online until 2022, I think. So you wouldn't even see the impact of the biggest project before theoretically you have people applying for the additional density. And so if you wanted to just run models, if this is all about running a model at 30.4, we could run that model today. In fact, we know what happens. We know what happens at 29.1. We could run the model at 30.4. What you need to do is a plan that actually requires that the mode shares be achieved, which is what the plan says is what it takes to bring this plan into balance. And so I'm frustrated that instead of completing the job, we've decided to let this thing pass and to not take firm steps to guarantee that the infrastructure is in place, and to basically kick this can down the road. And so I don't have any confidence, and I think the residents of all issues, at the end of the day, the most important thing to them, if you're going to do all this and make this plan work, was give us staging so we have some certainty that you're going to be able to provide the infrastructure and the capacity for things that you told us are essential to the plan. And I believe that the residents are correct. This stuff is essential to the plan. So I guess separating decisions about infrastructure from decisions about handing out density, I think are just bad policy. And we're going to get a lot of, I've already heard the discussions about the design guidelines and the pushback on design guidelines. This council and this planning board is going to get enormous pushback on anything in the overlay zone that starts to require the things we weren't willing to put into the master plan. And I've heard enough what I would consider conditional words from some members of the council to not be confident that some of these things that we say we're going to do are actually going to wind up getting done. And I wish that we had stuck with the recommendation that a number of us supported to require staging. And I frankly wish that we just told the Department of Transportation to come up with a plan that achieves, say 5 years after a plan is adopted, the balancing of existing parking for the existing development, and then just require that all future plans be approved at the same mode share splits. And I think that could have been done. And if that had been done, you may not even needed staging at all, because you would have had a plan that said you're going to bring the traffic into balance at dates certain, and that all future development would keep the traffic in balance. So I feel we've opted out of every way we could solve this problem and just kind of waved the yellow flag at it. And I'm not going to vote for another yellow flag. I think that I feel like we could have done better. I'm certainly going to work with my colleagues on what becomes the overlay zone, because that is the one place we can possibly guarantee the things that we're not able to guarantee right now. And I think it's important that at least we hold faith with the community that the plan we told them in balance will actually be in balance when we're done with the overlay zone. But I'm not going to vote for a plan that's not attached to infrastructure. That's not what planning is. Planning is not just assigning density. Planning is creating solutions for the problems that you're going to be confronting in the development of the plan. I'm a little bit bothered by the fact that, we're not getting, there's no certainty to what Bethesda will look like. And a lot of times when the planning board gives us a plan, they talk about a downtown or a town center, and they say this is what it's going to be. And the overlay zone and the ability of any developer who wants density, basically, if you have the money and you belly up to the bar and you say, I'll buy the density can go anywhere. And so instead of being able to present to the community a cohesive plan of what Bethesda is going to look like, we actually have no idea where those buildings are going to go. There's enough density for the buildings to go in any number of places, and some of them could be really good places, and some of them could be not so good places. And I felt that one of the jobs of planning was to come up with a plan that gives you a picture of Bethesda and says this is what Bethesda is going to be. And I think we have the possibility to do that. Zoning has always been done that way. This is not the way it's supposed to be, and I wish we were taking the time to do it a little bit differently. But I hope that we correct whatever the flaws are when we get to the overlay zone. A quote, I forgot. My staff worked really hard to find this one, and it sums up my view of this in musical terms. And the plan that we're going to pass today is Bon Jovi's Living on a Prayer. And I would have preferred Bruce Springsteen's Reason to Believe. Just to put it in musical terms, and since I'm often out listening to music, I thought those were two good song titles that work pretty well.
All in favor of the Bethesda plan as presented to us, please raise your hand. That is Mr. Hucker, Mr. Rice, Ms. Florine, Mr. Leventhal, Ms. Navarro. What's your name? Mr. Katz, Mr. Reamer, and myself, Roger Berliner. Opposed? Mr. Elrich. Measure passes 8-1.